status of women. I call this meeting to order. Before I get started, I just want to commend everybody. We are finishing up our session today on status of women. And today we've had the IVP tabled, and thank you so much to Sonia for making sure that was tabled, and also Bill C-28 was introduced. So I just want to say congratulations to everybody and great working to everybody on collaboration. And today we are returning to this very important study as well. So pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on Tuesday, February 1st, the committee will resume its study of resource development and violence against Indigenous women and girls. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid form. Pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021, members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. Per the directive of the Board of Internal Economy on March 10th, 2022, and I'm sorry about my dog, all those attending the meeting in person must wear a mask except for members who are at their place during proceedings. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of the witnesses and members. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. For those participating via video conference, click on the microphone icon to activate your mic, and please mute yourself when you are not speaking. Interpretation for those on Zoom, you will have the choice at the bottom of the screen, and it says for English or French. For those in the room, you can use the earpiece and select the desired channel. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. So today I would like to welcome our witnesses. As an individual, we have the Honorable Michelle Odette, the Senator and former Commissioner of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. From Regroupement du Centre des Métis Autochtones du Québec Incorporated, we have Jennifer Brazeau, Executive Director. From the Department of Natural Resources, Kimberly Zink, Director of General Reconciliation. From the Department of Public Safety and Emergent Preparedness, we have Christine Moran, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister, Indigenous Secretariat. Melanie Larocque, Director General, Program Development and International Affairs, Crime Prevention Branch. Michelle Van de Bogart, Director General, Law Enforcement and Border Strategies. And from the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, we have Patricia Brady, the Vice President, External Relations and Strategic Policy, and Brent Parker, Director General, External Relations and Strategic Policy. So everybody, we have a big day today. So to all of you, we will be granting you 5 minutes for your opening statement. I will be putting up a notice, and it's your 1 minute reminder that you have 60 seconds to go. I give you maybe 10 seconds over that, but because we have such an extraordinary panel today, we want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to hear from all the witnesses and all the questioners get their opportunity to speak as well. So I am going to pass it over for the first 5 minutes, and as an individual, to the Honorable Michelle Odette. Minister or Senator?
Oui, s'il vous plaît.
Yes, Senator, indeed. And I would like to thank the Anishinaabe Nation for welcoming me every day on their territory and allowing me to continue my work that is important to me and to my spirit. I would like to thank everyone here in the room and virtually on your Indigenous territories. It is important to voice my perspective on this important study on the relationship between resource exploitation and the rise of violence against Indigenous women and girls in Canada. And this is in accordance with Calls for Justice 13.4 and 13.5 of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. So you will know why it is so important for me to be here. However, I'm sure you won't be surprised that I am disappointed and frustrated at the lack of information on the implementation of the calls for justice. And these were proposed on June 3rd, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were celebrating the release of that report and a national action plan. The observation is that after reading the progress report of the National Action Plan, not much has been implemented. What is most important is having a mechanism for monitoring and coordination. There is still no coordinated approach. There is no guaranteed minimum income, and no 24-hour in-person support. A lot is lacking throughout Canada, and you have seen in the Globe and Mail, and I will quote in English.
Liberal announcement, many millions fund to support Indigenous women and girls facing gender-based violence. The money sit largely untouched, according to government figures as May 31st. More than half of the fund is allocated to the construction of at least 38 new shelters and 50 transitional homes across Canada. But none of that money has been allocated. The fund remaining of 304 millions is intended to support the running of the new shelter as well as violence prevention activities. The lack of construction means no operational funding has been spent, but the government has spent 12.6 millions
12.6
activities representing less than 2% of that total fund. Alors, comme je l'ai mentionné,
as I have mentioned many times, all calls for justice are important. But 1.7 on the ombudsperson and a tribunal and 1.10 on reporting need to be implemented, and this needed to be done yesterday. Transparency, accountability, and reporting, all of these things are key. I hope that you will consider those calls for justice as well. In 2022, too many Indigenous women and girls don't feel safe. And the data speaks for itself. Last month, in the space of 2 weeks, 3 Indigenous women in Ms. Kazan's riding were murdered. And we know now that the situation is problematic, and I would like to offer my deepest condolences. Every time we hear sad news like this, we think of the families and we send them our love and our condolences. We must protect human rights, women's rights. We need to put in place safeguards, strong safeguards that will be based on laws and rules. For example, the $15 million penalty that XLR Metal and an associated company, a mining company, have just been fined for being found guilty of environmental violations. Imagine if such mechanisms could be implemented to protect Indigenous women. That is the most recent example that I have. Now, beyond the physical and sexual abuse, resource exploitation has a significant impact on Indigenous women and other women as well. We have to examine our spiritual relationship with nature and wildlife and flora. Holistic health and environmental health are also impacted by this abuse. In conclusion, we all have a responsibility, regardless of where we are on this territory, in order to protect women and girls and survivors and the families who spoke up during the inquiry. I wish you all the best for your inquiry, and I will be eager to answer your questions.
Thank you so much. And so I'm just switching over to other information. I'm sorry, back to my chair's notes. Thank you so much for your time there. We're now going to go and pass it for the next 5 minutes. I would like to pass it to Jennifer Brazeau from Regroupement de Centre de Métiers Autochtones de Québec.
My name is Jennifer Brazeau. I'm the Executive Director of the Lanaudière Native Friendship Center. I'm here today representing the Regroupement des Centres d'Amitié du Québec, which is a provincial association that has campaigned for more than 45 years for the defense of rights and interests of Indigenous people in the urban centers, as well as supporting Indigenous friendship centers in Quebec in frontline service delivery. Across the province of Quebec, there are 10 friendship centers and 1 service center. And these friendship centers are there to serve Indigenous people living or passing through urban centers in Chibougamau, Joliette, Latuque, Maniwaki, Val-d'Or, Montréal, Quebec, Sainte-Terre, Sept-Îles, Trois-Rivières, and its point of service in Shawinigan. At the national level, I also represent the province of Quebec at the National Association of Friendship Centers as a board member. And just so you know, there are over 100 friendship centers across the country who are also servicing Indigenous people living in urban centers. The RCAQ and the NAFC are recognized as the largest urban service infrastructure for Indigenous people. The Friendship Center movement has been working for several decades to support Indigenous people in order to improve their quality of life. We also support Indigenous people navigating through various systems put in place by the government as being corridors of services between our friendship centers and the public services in each of our regions. When the system has failed our Indigenous people in our urban centers, the friendship centers are there for our people. We're there to offer them support, but above all, we're also there to offer them a space that is safe and free from judgment. Over the past decades, the RCAQ has been a witness and has participated in several commissions and inquiries, parliamentary commissions, reports, testimonies, and the development of recommendations, calls to actions. We have proposed innovative solutions to issues brought forth by the government and by the population and by our members. We have worked hard without denying our history, without erasing the trauma that our members have been living, and above all, without forgetting the tragedies that are happening presently, even in 2022. We will never forget, and that's why we want to break the cycle of indifference and violence by offering concrete actions and solutions for Indigenous people, but also through partnerships throughout our networks. Several decades of the status quo faced by Indigenous people has been leaving a chronic existence of a cultural barrier that has devastating effects on our people. We all know that there are higher rates of criminalization, higher rates of victimization. We have individual and collective rights that are not being respected by our Indigenous people. And Indigenous women are often at the forefront living this colonial violence. I can continue on and keep talking about the statistics of violence against women that Indigenous women are facing. You're going to have other experts that are going to come and bring that to you. But what I wanted to be able to talk to you about was how this violence is rooted in Canadian culture of genocide through the pursuit of exploitation of our territories, and how that reflects on how Indigenous women view themselves and how their own bodies are being exploited by the systems that are put in place through systemic racism, through the continued displacement of Indigenous people from their territories, through the rupture of being able to practice our cultural activities on our own territories, through the exploitation of mining companies, that are well overrepresented in Canada, which needs to be able to make us take a moment to pause and to question why we have so many extractivist companies within our country. Is it something that's rooted systemically in how Canadians exploit our territories, but then also we send those companies to other countries where they continue that exploitation and those systems of abuse and trauma in other countries. So I think it's important for us to note that as Indigenous women, when we witness these companies coming and destroying our natural areas, which we have a strong cultural connection to, where they're exploiting the nature around us, well, it has a severe impact on Indigenous women, because then ourselves, our own bodies become exploited too. When you have companies who come in, you have a rise in violence that's associated with fly in and fly out. You have Indigenous women who then flee those communities to be able to try to find safer spaces in the cities, and then who, through maybe self-medication, will end up having to use their own bodies to be able to pay for their own services. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry for being late on that. I was writing so many notes, so thank you so much. I'm now going to turn it over to the Department of Natural Resources, Kimberly Zenk, Director General Reconciliation, 5 minutes.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Kimberly Zink, the Director General of Reconciliation Implementation at Natural Resources Canada. I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. I'm pleased to contribute to the committee's study on resource development and violence against women and girls. I'd like to share with you how the department is changing the way it works by weaving Indigenous perspectives and opportunities into the fabric of what we do. In 2021, we merged the Office for Major Projects Management with the Office for Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation. And in March of this year, the resident elders that we work with and who advise us gifted us the name Nokwewashk, an Algonquin word for sweetgrass. To our knowledge, we are among the first in the Government of Canada to embrace an Indigenous name, and its meaning is impactful to the work that we do. The imagery of braided sweetgrass reminds us of the connection between the land, resources, and people. Notre travail repose sur les...
Our work is focused on relationships with Indigenous peoples, economic reconciliation, and regulatory innovation. It is in this spirit that I am here today.
We acknowledge that the discrimination and violence experienced by Indigenous women and girls and 2S LGBTQIA+ people is a result of generations of racist, sexist, and colonial laws and policies. This is why we are working with federal partners to develop the United Nations Declaration Act Action Plan and to implement the National Action Plan to end gender-based violence and the federal pathway to address missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and 2S LGBTQIA+ people. Indigenous people are the stewards, rights holders, and in many cases, title holders to the land upon which development takes place. The calls for justice tell us that more needs to be done to understand the impacts of resource development on Indigenous women and girls, and to ensure Indigenous people have equitable access to economic benefits. En travaillant avec des organisations.
By working with Indigenous women's organizations like Paktuti, we are helping ensure the safety and well-being of Inuit women in the resource extraction industry. We are leading the way for Canada in the global Equal by 30 campaign, which is working towards equal pay, leadership, and opportunities for women in the clean energy sector.
Programs and governance, we ensure the perspectives of Indigenous people are considered, reflected, and represented throughout the life cycle of projects, and that Indigenous people benefit economically from resource development. The Indigenous Natural Resource Partnerships Program increases the participation of communities and organizations in major natural resource infrastructure development. Since 2019, we've provided $18 million in funding for Indigenous-led projects like management and leadership training for Indigenous women in the oil and gas sectors. We work directly with communities through the Indigenous Advisory and Monitoring Committee for the Trans Mountain Expansion Project to address the impacts of temporary work camps and the influx of workers. The mining industry has deep and long-standing relationships with Indigenous communities. Canada's critical minerals strategy will ensure respect for Indigenous and treaty rights, meaningful engagement, partnership, and collaboration with Indigenous people. By working with industry organizations like the Mining Association of Canada, we are helping to support intercultural awareness, human rights, and anti-racism training for employees. In closing, by acknowledging the mistakes of the past and changing how we work today, we're shaping how we care for the land, resources, and Indigenous people. Merci, Megwet.
Thank you.
Je veux remercier pour le temps.
I would like to thank you for the time today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over to Christine Moran, who is with the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. Christine, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you today. As you noted, my name is Christine Moran, and I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Indigenous Secretariat at Public Safety Canada. I'm joined by my colleagues Michelle Van de Bogart, who is the Director General of Law Enforcement, and Melanie Larocque, who is the Director General of Program Development and Intergovernmental Affairs. I will provide opening comments on behalf of Public Safety Canada, and we'd be pleased to take your questions. Public Safety Canada is a partner in advancing the federal pathway to address missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited LGBTQIA+ people, a key part of the larger 2021 National Action Plan that was developed with Indigenous partners and provincial and territorial governments. The federal pathway is organized in 4 themes, with Public Safety Canada's contributions falling mainly within the human safety and security and justice themes. Collaboration with Indigenous communities, provinces and territories, police, and other organizations is crucial to developing more culturally appropriate and socially responsive approaches to community safety. Budget 2021 announced $861 million over 5 years, beginning in 21-22, and $145 million ongoing to support culturally responsive policing and community safety services in Indigenous communities. This includes funding to support the co-development of federal First Nations police service legislation. Virtual engagement sessions with First Nations have just taken place to support this objective, and a What We Heard report will be made publicly available shortly. While efforts to co-development federal legislation for First Nations police services are ongoing, Inuit and Métis groups are also being engaged to better understand and identify their unique policing and community safety priorities. We are also enhancing RCMP services funded through the First Nations and Inuit policing program, increasing access to dedicated and culturally responsive policing services in areas often impacted by natural resource development, including the territories. In addition to our investments in Indigenous policing, Budget 2021 announced up to $64.6 million over 5 years and $18.1 million ongoing to enhance Indigenous-led crime prevention strategies and community safety services, including through the Aboriginal Community Safety Planning Initiative, or the ACSP. The purpose of ACSP, created in 2010, is to directly support Indigenous community healing through a facilitated community-driven process that works to address multiple safety and wellness issues as determined by the community using a community safety plan process. The plans reflect community safety challenges, community strengths, resources, and goals. In addition, ACSP coordinates with government, with provincial and territorial partners, local municipal governments and services, and industry partners to address issues raised in the safety plans. For example, Public Safety, Natural Resources Canada, and Trans Mountain Corporation recently worked together to support Indigenous communities to mitigate risks posed by the proximity of industry work sites to their communities, including impacts on Indigenous women and girls. I know you've previously heard testimony about transient natural resource development camps and the clear link between these camps and sexual violence against Indigenous women and girls, including human trafficking. Human trafficking is a complex and highly gendered crime with root causes including poverty, gender, racism, wage inequality, lack of education, and employment opportunities, which we know Indigenous people experience disproportionately. In September 2019, the Minister of Public Safety launched the National Strategy to Combat Human Trafficking, which brings together federal efforts under one strategic framework. The National Strategy is based on the internationally recognized pillars of prevention, protection, prosecution, partnerships, and adds a new pillar of empowerment, which focuses on enhancing supports for victims affected by this crime. Through the National Strategy to Combat Human Trafficking, the Government of Canada invested up to $22.4 million for organizations that are working to prevent human trafficking and support at-risk populations and survivors. Half of these organizations serve Indigenous people and 10 are Indigenous-led. These projects have and will continue to increase access to services and supports for victims and survivors, raise awareness of human trafficking among youth at risk, and develop innovative technological ideas to combat human trafficking. Raising awareness of human trafficking among Canadians is critical. Public Safety launched an awareness campaign, It's Not What It Seems, to educate the public, especially youth and parents, about human trafficking, which included Indigenous-specific focus groups. We are also working to develop and support guidelines and training tools for frontline service providers, including specific guidelines to support Indigenous survivors. With these efforts, Public Safety Canada is working with Indigenous survivors, communities, organizations, and police services to strengthen the safety and security of Indigenous women and girls. Michelle, Melanie, and I would be happy to take your questions. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over to the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada and Patricia Brady. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bonjour, good afternoon. My name is Patricia Brady, and I'm the Vice President of External Relations and Strategic Policy at the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. I'm joined today by my colleague Brent Parker, Director General of Strategic Policy at the agency. We're both grateful to be joining the committee today from Ottawa, the traditional unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We would
like to thank you for the opportunity to contribute to the committee's study on resource development and violence against Indigenous women and girls. The National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls brought to the fore the devastating scope and scale of the issue and provided direction to address it. The Impact Assessment Agency, in its role leading federal assessments of major projects, is committed and actively working to address the calls to justice relevant to our work.
The Impact Assessment Agency is responsible for assessing major projects, such as certain large mines, oil facilities, and dams, for their positive and negative environmental, economic, social, and health impacts, supporting the Minister of Environment and Climate Change and the Governor and Council in making decisions on those projects. Assessments identify, in advance, the best ways to avoid or reduce a project's negative impacts. They also look to find ways to enhance the positive aspects of a project on health, social, or economic outcomes. The Impact Assessment Act, which came into force in August 2019, replacing the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act of 2012, governs our work and includes important provisions and process steps that are relevant to the committee's mandate, which I'll highlight now. First, the Impact Assessment Act's preamble includes the Government of Canada's commitment to reconciliation and to implementing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to ensuring that the rights of Indigenous peoples are respected throughout federal impact assessments. Second, on an assessment and decision-making level, the Act requires that a project's impacts on the rights of Indigenous peoples and effects to Indigenous health, social, and economic conditions be considered. The Act requires Indigenous knowledge to be considered, and it specifically requires that Indigenous women's knowledge be considered in strategic and regional assessments. We must publicly report how this knowledge is considered while protecting confidential knowledge from disclosure. The Act also requires the application of gender-based analysis plus to understand the disproportionate effects that major projects have on diverse subgroups of people. To support this requirement, we draw on expertise and advice from Women and Gender Equality Canada. The application of gender-based analysis plus means that disproportionate effects, including impacts to Indigenous women's rights and to their safety and security, and mitigation measures, can be identified in advance. The decision maker must take these disproportionate effects and mitigation measures into account in decision making. On a process level, to facilitate meaningful participation in an assessment, we require an Indigenous engagement and partnership plan to be developed at the outset in order to help guide the assessment. The agency also has an Indigenous capacity support program that offers financial support so that Indigenous groups are prepared to engage in assessment processes in general, and a funding program to facilitate participation in specific project assessments. For each project assessed, tailored impact statement guidelines are issued by the agency. These outline the information that proponents must provide in their assessments, and to date have included a requirement that risks to Indigenous women's safety and security be considered. The agency has dedicated guidance for proponents on GBA Plus in impact assessment that includes specific reference to calls to justice 13.1 to 13.5. The process also requires that the proponent mitigate adverse effects to the greatest extent possible. If the project moves forward, these mitigation measures are included as enforceable conditions in the decision statement issued by the minister, and the proponent must comply with them. These would include measures to help protect Indigenous women's safety and security. Finalement, au but d'améliorer nos processus.
Finally, in order to improve our processes, over the past few years, we have worked with our partners, such as the Native Women's Association of Canada, to better understand the issues and strengthen impact assessment for Indigenous women. We also funded studies on GBA Plus and reports on impacts that projects have on Indigenous women and girls. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the committee and to contribute to this important work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're now going to start off with our 6-minute rounds. We're going to be starting with CPC. And Dominique, I'm going to pass the floor to you. You have 6 minutes. Dominique, can everybody hear me?
Oui.
Okay, you have the
Très
floor.
bien, merci beaucoup.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to our guests this afternoon. Thank you for your testimonies. My first question is for Ms. Brazou. Your network is well known. What kind of data do you collect? What kind of situations have you documented? What do you know about violence linked to resource extraction and Indigenous women and girls? Do you collect data on that? Answer. Not at the Friendship Center, but I could share stories of women that were victims of violence in northern communities where there are mining projects. These are women who are already in vulnerable situations that turn to prostitution, and they end up around men that are fly in, fly out, or people coming from abroad. And this can increase the violence against Indigenous women in those regions. There are often women who will leave their communities and try to flee these systems, who end up on the streets in Montreal, for example, because of an increase of violence in their communities. Ms. Brazou, clearly you are at the heart of a network that is well aware of what's going on. Women speak to you, and you work with Indigenous communities. Would you say that the situation has deteriorated, or have there been improvements? It's difficult to say. I can't say that things deteriorated or not. I think for now things are quite stable with the data for violence against Indigenous women. We're still the most victimized group. It's a cycle of violence that continues today, so the situation has not been solved. Ms. Brazou, we heard Ms. Zing and others talk about initiatives. We heard the words millions quite a lot in their presentations. Are you feeling the impact of these investments if you're saying that things haven't changed? Answer. Investments are important to develop programs and services, but these investments often are by project. So it does not create a shift in the social mindset. So things need to be done at other levels. Whether we talk about systemic racism that is deeply anchored in the Canadian system, it'll take more than a few $1 million. It will take as well a social mind shift to really change things. Secondly, for someone who is in a crisis or in an emergency, well, we're seeing what is happening in our communities, and we'll have to stabilize the situation, but currently the situation is not stable. Ms. Bradzi, hello. From what I understood, and apologies, Madam Deputy Minister, if I understood correctly, you support police agencies, and you can let me know if I didn't understand you correctly. But you support police agencies and organizations on the field for public safety. What we've heard is that Indigenous women and girls don't trust police agencies. There's a lack of credibility and trust. What would you say to that today? Because you talked about good initiatives, but on the field, things seem to be going differently. Ms. Moran.
Thank you very much for the question. We did actually discuss the issue of culturally responsive policing. You are correct when you say that there are many times when women, and I would say more broadly Indigenous people, do not trust the police. For this reason, the federal government has embarked upon the co-development of federal legislation to establish First Nations police forces and First Nations policing as an essential service. So that is supporting culturally responsive, community-driven policing in those communities. It is work that is underway. We are working with the the Assembly of First Nations. We have just completed our round of engagement, and we will be publishing a What We Heard report. What I can say to add to that is that communities that have
Okay, yeah, sorry. We're going to switch over just because we're going to try to keep it so that everybody has their opportunity. And so we can expand into the next question. And somehow I can't get this canceled. I'm going to pass it over to Mark Soray. If he wants to continue with the thought, he could. But carry on. Mark, you have 6 minutes.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you to all of our witnesses with us today for your leadership. And thank you for your testimonies. I think that we could spend a lot of time discussing things with the witnesses, but unfortunately I only have 6 minutes. So my first question is for Senator Odette. Thank you so much for your leadership for Indigenous communities, and thank you for your work as a commissioner on the Commission on the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls. Thank you very much. We do need to do better. Could you give us more details? You said that you were eager to see our recommendations, but you have so much experience in the field. I would like to hear your recommendations with regards to the motion before us and the links between resource extraction and violence against Indigenous women and girls. Could you give some specific recommendations for our committee? We work very well together. Thank you very much for your question. Zero tolerance is important for racism, for violence, but we need to remember that we can't examine things in a silo for resource extraction and Indigenous rights. We need to see as well the link with the environment, because all of these things are intertwined. There are members here that represent regions in which resource extraction will have to be coordinated with provinces and territories and with groups who don't necessarily listen to our voices. When we talk about mechanisms and spaces to say when there are issues, to be able to complain, it is important. There shouldn't just be one person saying that this is happening. Canadian institutions have so many supports. It's important to recognize that Indigenous women do have different experiences.
To Kimberly Zink from NARCAN. As a parliamentary secretary in the last parliament, I worked closely with NRCan and just amazed at the number of staff that are involved, Indigenous staff that are involved with NRCan. And I wanted to get expand your thoughts, Kimberly, on what you've done as a department, NRCan, to look at the implementation of UNDRIP, and especially when we look at the original document that includes several articles on Indigenous women, and how is the work that you've done to ensure that that is kind of expanded across the country here in the natural resources sector?
Thank you very much for the question. There's so much that's being done within the organization to promote diversity and inclusion, particularly in terms of hiring and making sure that Indigenous voices are represented at our own tables. I spoke in my opening remarks about the change that we made as an organization by merging the Major Projects Management Office with Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation. And by doing that, we are bringing that Indigenous perspective to everything that we do. We're organizing ourselves to work with partners across the federal family to deliver on UNDRIP and on the federal pathways. We have an Indigenous Employees Network, for example, and we have folks in the organization that are responsible for equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that's just the internal facing work that we're doing. And it's not only within one sector of the department, but it's across all sectors.
No, thank you. Thank you for that answer. Dernière question ici, je pense qu'il reste.
And last question, I think I have about a minute and a half left. Thank you very much, Ms. Brazeau, for all the work that you're doing in Quebec and in Canada with Indigenous friendship centers. It's such important work. But I would like to come back to your comments on fly in, fly out. Can you share your experience on impact assessments and impact benefit agreements? The Natural Resource Center sometimes works with Indigenous boards, but sometimes those boards are only Indigenous men. Could you tell us how we could change that? I don't work with communities, so I can't tell you about the impact of these agreements that are negotiated. However, I can say that our organization was created to give a voice to Indigenous women. I think that consultations need to go beyond the Band Council. It should be with communities that will be impacted. And we need to remember that it goes beyond these communities. It also impacts Indigenous people in cities. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think my time is up.
There we go. Sorry, it's like I've not used Zoom for the last while. I'm going to now pass it over to Adrienne Laroche. Adrienne, you have 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to thank my colleagues and the witnesses for being with us. We can see that beyond the statistics and beyond the data where we see the disproportionate impacts on women, we see faces and stories, sad stories that need to be shared and that require us to focus on this issue to find solutions. I will address my first question to Ms. Odette, Senator Odette. You talked about funds that were promised for implementing the recommendations. I would like to hear you talk more about this because the funds mentioned are quite significant. What will the impact be for these funds? And what will be the importance of this money trickling down to the field? I would like to hear you tell us more about the importance of those funds reaching the field. Thank you to the member for your important question. Canada will have important criteria for how funds are allocated, and it will be different for groups on the field. COVID has changed things. We were able to save lives and be able to act instead of react. Here we're talking about a national tragedy. Women are disappearing and dying every week in Canada, and we're realizing that the way that projects are approved is as rigid as before. So how do we tell women that they need to fit in a certain box created by the federal government? Creating shelters to protect women, it's understood that these funds won't be spent right away, but I don't understand in other areas where there are great initiatives that save lives or support lives have a hard time receiving funds. I think it is up to the government to answer that question. Perhaps another sub-question. An example maybe of these good initiatives, because a lot of witnesses told us the importance of taking into account Indigenous perspectives and how they have a different vision of reconciliation and healing. I was in the Yukon recently, and they shared the evolution of their work on the National Inquiry and their action plan. And they worked with Indigenous organizations, women's organizations, and we saw initiatives of people working on language and culture. And the first time that I went to the Yukon, when I was just an Indigenous woman, and then as a commissioner, it was important to see the hope in the eyes of Indigenous people. That helped me after the inquiry. So why not support those kinds of initiatives throughout Canada, regardless of where we are? Women have that expertise, and one of the calls for justice is to ensure that women are at the heart of all initiatives that a federal government, provincial government, or Indigenous government will implement. So if I understood correctly, we need to allow women to be empowered, to allow them to be less vulnerable to resource extraction companies. These women need to know that they have some expertise, or we need to allow them to get that expertise. Leaders are found within those groups, and they live close to resource activities. Thank you, Senator Odette. You talked about the importance of a territory, and for Ms. Brazeau, you talked about the importance of groups like yours in Quebec and in Canada. My colleagues in Abitibi-Témiscamingue are also well aware of this issue of fly-in, fly-out, which has an impact on Indigenous women. Ms. Brazeau, in what you see with your friendship centers, how can your friendship centers be a part of the process with Indigenous women? How is your space important to prevent exploitation? Answer. I believe that Michel Odette named it well. The healing process and protection measures goes hand in hand with women's culture and gives them the possibility to reappropriate their culture and their territory. We can't take a woman out of that territory. We need to recognize the importance of their relationships with their land. So I understand the importance of working with these women and having them at the heart of the process. And perhaps I'll come back to this in my next turn, it is important to rebuild trust with certain authorities, but I'll come back to that later.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're now going to pass it over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Chair. My first question is for Madame Zink from the Department of Natural Resources. You spoke about how Indigenous, how your department is trying to integrate Indigenous perspectives, in terms of revamping your department. But here's the thing. In the last Parliament, this government implemented, put in place into law, a Bill C-15 to see the full implementation and adoption of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So we need to go beyond perspectives to actually getting free, prior, and informed consent. I want to define that for you. Free of coercion and intimidation, prior to development, informed, knowing what the development is about and all the impacts of that development. And it's only when you have those three things do you actually have consent. I'm going to give you an example. Wet'suwet'en territory, the RCMP came in, took down a door of 2 unarmed women on their unceded territory with an axe, chainsaw, and an attack dog. Do you think that kind of behavior is consistent with FPIC going back to free of coercion and intimidation? Yes or no?
Thanks very much for the question. And events like that definitely sadden me. Expectations are high.
Sorry. I have very limited time and important questions, so I like a yes or no answer. Was that, did that meet requirements in terms of free of an intimidation and coercion? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry that the answer to that question is not yes or no. What I can tell you is that recently, having heard from
so I'm going to move on. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
I think that's a clear act of intimidation. So I would say no, you did not meet the criteria for FPIC. Moving on, I'd like to point my next question to Madame Moran. One of the things that you shared is that the RCMP. Was that your department is working hard with police services to ensure the safety of Indigenous women and girls. Does the RCMP fall under your department, yes or no?
The RCMP is part of the public safety portfolio.
Perfect, thank you. And you spoke specifically about TMX as one of your examples. And we're talking about ensuring safety of Indigenous women. So I want to quote Chief Judy Wilson, who's the Secretary-Treasurer of the UBCIC. She said the following in regards to Indigenous women on Sweatback territory. She said this in quotes, "The Tiny House Warriors are a group of Indigenous women, families, and land defenders who are exercising their inherent right to live on their lands as their ancestors have done since time immemorial. They are being targeted for upholding their sovereignty and opposing the construction of TMX and associated work camps that are known for increasing the risks of violence, assault, and intimidation against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people." And she went on to condemn it. This was a press release about their calls, the UBCIC's calls to end to surveillance and intimidation of tiny house warriors and Indigenous land defenders. Do you think that kind of behavior makes Indigenous women feel safe on their unceded territories, yes or no?
Madam Chair, what I can say is
Okay, I'll reframe my question. If you were being intimidated and surveilled at your home, would you feel safe? Yes or no?
Madam Chair, is that a question for public safety?
It has become a little bit more personal.
Yes,
I
sorry.
do respect.
Okay,
I absolutely
okay,
respect.
fair enough, Chair.
Sorry, yeah,
I'll withdraw the question. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, Yeah,
yeah.
Leah, I'm not going to take any time away from you.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
I fully respect. Let's just direct it to more
Sure.
rather than to Ms. Moran. Let's
Sure.
direct it to the
Yeah.
whole. But I do understand where you're coming from the
Yeah,
heart.
for
Okay?
sure. I'll withdraw
okay.
that question. So I've given a couple of examples, and I know that I was very pointed in my questions, but I've heard a lot of discourse today. But then when I look at the news and the behavior on the ground, it's certainly not consistent with what's being shared today. And I think that's important to point out to this committee, that women, Indigenous women, are currently being targeted and surveilled by for example, by police, services that are supposed to be put in place to actually protect people are actually creating harm. So I wanted to move on to Senator Odette. I want to lift you up for all the work that you've done in this area. We both know that Indigenous women are often too traumatized and afraid to press charges on the violence they experience in man camps, or that they experience at the hands of police. And you noted in an interview with Al Jazeera that you are personally aware of at least 3 Indigenous women who have been raped in a man camp in Quebec. And my question to you is, what must be done to ensure that we not only address the root of violence and address violence, but also ensure that there are safe, accessible, transparent, and accountable processes that protect women and support them to share their experiences and heal?
Okay, my dog, of course, is barking at the most. Leah, I really respect all of this. We won't have time for that full answer, but there's lots of time going on.
Sure.
To our last witness, I apologize for not, as the chair, not just jumping in immediately. We usually have more of an informal setting, and I do recognize that this is a very, very sensitive issue, especially for those who have been impacted. So I do apologize to our last witness for not jumping in at a sooner time. So let's just continue getting right on track. I really respect that. We'll have time to have Ms. Odette answer that question on Leah's next turn, and I'm going to pass it over to Shelby Cramp for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can all certainly acknowledge that there's a lot of disturbing content, but 100% very necessary to speak to. My first question will be posed to that of the Department of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness. I believe it's Madame Moran. One of the initiatives of the National Strategy to Combat Human Trafficking, it was from 2019 to 2024, I'll just recap it quickly, was to develop multi-sectoral training tools that are culturally relevant and gender responsive for frontline service providers and targeted groups from a variety of different sectors, hospitality, transportation, to increase awareness of the indicators and signs of human trafficking and enable employees to effectively identify victims. So my first part of the question is, what progress has public safety made with regard to developing these tools that is spoken about in that?
Thank you for the question. I'm going to ask Ms. Van de Bogart to respond.
Thank you very much for the question. I can tell you that this is one of the activities that we are currently working on. A contract has been awarded, and we are working on the guidelines themselves. You mentioned it's to train people that are in the industry business. We're focusing on 4 key areas: hospitality, so people like front desk workers or those that are cleaning hotel rooms. The health center, we're focusing on nurses because we know that many people who are victims of human trafficking enter the healthcare system through the ERs. From a transportation perspective, we're focusing on the aviation sector. And the last area that we're targeting is foreign workers, because as we know that human trafficking, many of the victims of human trafficking are for sexual exploitation, that human trafficking does exploit those that are working as well. What I can tell you is work is well underway, and one last thing that I wanted to add is that the materials for the tools will be informed by survivors of both sexual and labor exploitation in Canada.
Okay, thank you for that. So just to supplement that question, would be how, if at all, do or will these training tools take into account the actual unique experiences of Indigenous women and girls as regards to human trafficking? Because I think what we're really trying to find is we need to see some data-driven material. So where are the unique experiences coming into the report?
Thank you for the question. So I'd like to take us back to before the action plan or the strategy was created. And prior to that, we did extensive stakeholder engagement, which involved engagement with Indigenous individuals, with those with lived experiences, and a lot of NGOs, as well as academia and FPTs. But we've also, as we've been launching different parts of our action plan or the strategy, we've been continuing to reach out to engage with those with lived experiences, including Indigenous peoples. And once again, as we are developing these tools, as I mentioned, they will be informed by the survivors of sexual and labor exploitation. And we know that these survivors, at a disproportionate rate, tend to be Indigenous peoples. And so it's very key for us under the empowerment pillar that we are ensuring that the voices of those that have been victims and survivors of human trafficking are taken into consideration each and every step of the implementation of our national strategy.
Excellent, thank you. With our Honourable Odette being in the room, perhaps I'll pose the next question to her. So thank you very much for all that you do and continue to do. Honourable Odette, the National Inquiry cited several contributing factors to violence against Indigenous women and girls, such as substance abuse and addictions and economic insecurity. So my question is, how do you see or what is the federal government, what can they do to help increase Indigenous women's economic security and support those that are facing substance abuse problems? Because it seems as though there's a tremendous amount of conversation and concern and talk and study after study, but where are we at and where are we going that we can give some substantive solutions to the significant problem?
That's a very long question. So, Honourable Odette, I'll give you about 20 extra seconds there. And Leah, I'll give you some extra time there. So, sorry. Go ahead, Minister, or Honourable Odette.
Je ne suis pas ministre, désolée.
I'm not a minister, I apologize. But I'm very happy to be a senator. But the most important thing is to remember that substance abuse is caused by generational trauma. So we need to focus on the root issue. And we need to have women and girls at the heart of our initiatives. And there needs to be long-term funding. 20 seconds I have? So funding for Indigenous organizations for women on the ground and not per project.
Gosh. Emanuela, I'm going to pass it over to you now for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd like to begin by thanking all of the witnesses for being here for this great testimony today, and offering us great testimony today. I guess my first questions are going to go to Mrs. Moran as well as Ms. Zink, and I guess we can answer them in that order. I've heard a lot of the different programs that you mentioned are being put in place in order to protect Indigenous women and girls. And we also are hearing that on the ground, it's not necessarily being shown that there's actually a difference being made. I'd like to know, what are your ways of measuring success of the programs that are being implemented? And have you noticed do you have any data in front of you that can show us that kind of a difference in the amount of time that you've been practicing these activities or these practices?
Thank you. Just with respect to, at least with First Nations and Inuit policing program, we do collect data, and part of that data is correlated with external data. So what I can say is that we know that from our own data collection, that community members who have a self-administered police force in their community feel far more secure and they feel more comfortable interacting with the police. The the National Information Center on the National Indigenous Center on Information Governance has cited that more than 30% of community members with a self-administered police force report feeling safe, whereas fewer than 10% who do not have a self-administered force report feeling safe. So that is an important factor. That's a really important figure for us. We do know through our own tracking that we are also seeing that when we make investments in community policing in First Nations communities, we're seeing better outcomes.
Ms. Zink, thank you very much. Ms. Zink?
Thank you very much for the question. Well, I don't have data to share with you today. I can absolutely get that information and share it with the Committee on the Performance Measures and Indicators with respect to our programming that is dedicated towards these issues. What I can tell you, however, is the work of the Indigenous Advisory and Monitoring Committee for TMX, the Socioeconomic Subcommittee in particular, has been working in partnership with Indigenous communities and those that are impacted by the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. They have identified access to traditional harvesting and hunting sites, addressing incidents of racism that occur on and off construction sites, among other things, to be their top priorities. So I do believe that we have some metrics from the work of that committee that we'll be able to share with you. And I understand that they have provided a brief to this committee for the purpose of this study.
Okay, thank you very much. Ma prochaine question, je pense que vous l'avez dit.
My next question, and I think that you already started to answer it, Madam Senator, but you stated that funding is only given when projects are proposed and how that doesn't work for Indigenous communities. And I would like to ask if you had more to say on that answer, because we are trying to find concrete recommendations through this study. So if you have any specific recommendations, that would be great. Thank you very much for your question. And this allows me to add something that I was not able to explain earlier. Often, the federal government will work with national organizations, Indigenous Women Canada, and these are not necessarily the organizations that are in the field. So we need to put ourselves in the community's moccasins, in their shoes. These communities are far from urban centers, and they may not have direct ties with these federal organizations. And it's very rare that they will receive long-term funding and that would contribute to their well-being. So the government needs to innovate. They need to go to the areas where crises are present. So these areas that are far from Montreal, I'm from Quebec, so far from Quebec City, because they don't have the means, and they need to be able to benefit of these billions of dollars that were announced. Thank you very much, and I will conclude there because I think I have less than 30 seconds left.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over for 2.5 minutes to Andréane Laroche. Andréane, 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Apologies. I'm getting quite emotional today. It's our last meeting of the session. And during this session, I had the birth of my first daughter. So when we're talking about violence against women, I feel particularly impacted. And I'm sorry, I'm quite emotional. It's our last meeting. So my question is, when we're talking about violence against women, Ms. Brady, you talked about this issue. How can we improve things? And this is how I ended my first round of questions. How could we increase trust for women in those communities so that they can raise the alarm bells for situations, so they could report situations? What could be done to improve their sense of safety?
Did you want to direct that to one specifically?
Je vais adresser ma question à Madame Brady.
It was for Ms. Brady, or if it has not been mentioned, Ms. Moran as well could perhaps respond. Because when I was talking about data earlier, I was able to sit on the Public Safety Committee, and we saw there that women are more impacted. And this week, I talked about mandatory minimums and the impact on the overrepresentation. So can you talk to us more about trust? Ms. Brady, Ms. Moran, what could be done to improve this trust?
Madam Chair, I will just note that I note that question has been directed to Ms. Brady and to I.
Yeah.
I will just note that I am not in a position to answer that directly, but I'll take note of it and provide you with an answer on that issue.
Adrienne?
Oui, bon, d'accord.
All right. With the statistics, there's also, in the bill, there was the matter of mandatory minimums, but also of other impacts, because Ms. Odette, Senator Odette, you talked about the healing process and the impact that that has on communities and how it needs to be seen as a public health issue. And perhaps we could come back to solutions in another turn.
Absolutely, will do so. So I'm going to pass it over for the next 2.5 minutes. We'll give it to Leah. Leah, 2.5 minutes.
Yes, thank you. And again, Senator Odette, thank you so much for being here. I lift you up for the work that you've done around this critical issue. I spoke a little bit about women not wanting to come forward when they experience violence, whether it's by perpetrators in man camps or police. I gave a couple of examples of ongoing police violence. Just wondering if you could share what needs to be done to ensure that root causes are addressed, to deal with this ongoing issue of violence, and to make sure that processes are put in place that are safe, accessible, transparent, and accountable to make sure that women and girls are protected.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la députée, pour votre...
Thank you very much for your question. We've heard about initiatives from government representatives. These initiatives go with political will. If we have autonomous governments, well, then the answer would be different. But before we get there, the federal government and the provinces and territories have certain responsibilities to change the culture of how things are done in a government. If we don't have legislation that obligates us to show transparency and accountability, to ensure that public safety and human rights are respected, if they're only in initiatives here and there, unfortunately, we will be saying the same thing in 10 years. The legislation needs to be clear. There needs to be zero tolerance for all forms of violence.
Thank you so much. You spoke to call for justice 1.7 to appoint an ombudsman to oversee. You said we need it implemented yesterday. Can you expand on that?
Bien sûr. Alors, le même...
Of course. If we talk about exploitation and what's happening in Indigenous communities, but if we look at all institutions and all programs and services that Indigenous women and girls have access to, but they may not be aware of.
Senator, we're going to have to get back to you. We do have lots of time still, so we're going to get back to you. I'm going to now pass it over to Dominique. Dominique, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can we talk about companies, those that are on the field that welcome workers?
Yeah, we.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Is everybody hearing it okay? Okay, sorry, maybe it was just me.
Alors, merci Karen. Alors, j'aimerais qu'on...
Thank you, Karen. I would like for us to focus on these companies that are on the field doing resource exploitation, that welcome employees from afar for short periods. The interpreter would like to note that unfortunately the microphone is not selected.
Okay, so
Vous m'entendez pas?
no, the microphone is not selected for Dominique. Pour Dominique, oui?
Yes, for Dominique.
Okay, Dominique?
Est-ce que là, vous m'entendez? Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Ah, désolé. Alors, je reprends. Alors,
et pour l'interprétation?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay, merci.
C'est bon? OK. Donc, je répète. J'aimerais qu'on...
I would like for us to focus on companies that are on the field that welcome men that work for short periods of time. They leave with their pockets full, and we know the rest of the story. What is the responsibility for those companies? Ms. Zink, you're from the Natural Resources Department. Do you have... And Ms. Odette talked about legislation and how perspectives need to change. But for you, with your department, are you able to do a follow-up or impose certain things so that companies do things properly and that they inform their employees of consequences and that it will be zero tolerance for violence against women? Briefly, please.
Merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you for the question. I will be responding in English.
What I can tell you is that the Canada Energy Regulator does require companies like the Trans Mountain Corporation to put in place things like socioeconomic effects monitoring plan, a worker accommodation strategy, as well as community benefit programs, and that the Canada Energy Regulator does hold the corporation to account with respect to the requirements that are set out. And that's part of the 156 binding conditions.
Concretely, though, what are you saying today?
What I'm saying today is that there are 156 binding conditions on the Trans Mountain Expansion project, and as part of that, the corporation must have in place a worker accommodation strategy, which it does. There are also provincial conditions that are layered on top of that, in addition to a worker accommodation strategy at the federal and provincial levels for projects like that, as well as others.
And how does this protect women? And quickly, please, because I want to turn to Senator Odette after.
The worker accommodations strategies are developed by the corporation in consultation with the Indigenous Advisory and Monitoring Committee, as well as communities that are on the ground, so that they are meaningful and take into account the unique circumstances of the communities in which those camps are situated.
Parfait.
Very well, thank you. Senator Odette, I'm happy to be able to speak to you this afternoon, and I don't have a lot of time, but how could we get around the table people from municipal entities, workers' unions, Indigenous communities, police agencies, and bosses of these companies to sit together and change mentalities? Answer: I love your question. I think that it could be a recommendation in your report. That circle or that group of organizations that you mentioned should do that. We do that for the economic development of Indigenous people in Quebec, but that is something that we could examine. And I'm sure that companies will tell us that they've done more than what was presented at the committee. It seems that it's the start of something. Everyone sits at the same table, and we need them to talk about the same thing and use the same language. We need to describe the situations. If not, mentalities won't change, and that social responsibility won't be easy either. And creating advisory committees, and if there are no women who are survivors, well, perhaps the group will think they're doing something right, but they're not. So I do support your comment, and I do believe that it should be a recommendation. Thank you, and it seems so simple. I don't have any other questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're now going to pass it over to Jenna. Jenna, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much to all of the incredible witnesses and their testimony here today on such an important discussion. I think I'd like to start with Ms. Brady from the Impact Assessment Agency. You, in your testimony, had started to describe a little bit around the GBA Plus model and had mentioned mitigation measures. And so I'm wondering if you can share with us what you expect, what we all should be expecting of any resource extraction company as they begin a project as far as mitigation measures are concerned.
Thanks for the question. And it sounds like I'm having a problem with my mic.
Try that again. A lot of times it's just there may have been one on in the room.
Okay, sorry. Oh, that sounds better now. Sure. So thanks for the question. I did speak to mitigation measures. So first, as I mentioned, GBA Plus analysis is a required part of the impact assessment of a project now. So projects that come under the federal system will be required to do a GBA Plus analysis. Proponents will be required to consider and study the issue and including mitigation measures in advance. So we haven't had a project go through the new act yet, but we expect that conditions like physical, site, and security measures, employee support programs, employment policies and conditions related to harassment or anti-harassment, education and awareness programs, and support for community social infrastructure could be among some of the mitigation measures that could be put in place as binding conditions. Those conditions are binding and subject to monitoring and enforcement under the Act.
Thank you very much. So if I recall correctly, the Act came into place, I think you had said August 2019, and you're saying no, it hasn't been utilized yet. No company has come through this legislation yet?
Sorry, no, we have 19 projects under
If someone could turn the mic off in the room, perfect.
We have 19 projects under the system now, but none have come all the way through to the point where we have binding conditions in place. So we are, however, requiring now GBA Plus on all of those projects to be done and those mitigation measures to be considered. And ultimately, when we have decisions under the Impact Assessment Act, we would expect that they will include conditions related to security and safety of Indigenous women.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that clarification. And perhaps it's early days to ask this question, but I will in case it's not. And that is, are you starting to see the impact of this new legislation coming to fruition as these companies are going through the process?
I would say hard to say the impact of conditions because we don't have any in place yet, but certainly the consciousness and sensibility around GBA Plus and the application by proponents is improving across the board. But in terms of whether concrete measures are having an impact, we don't have that kind of information yet.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. My next questions I'll direct to Ms. Moran with Public Safety. So we've had some discussion today around, whether Indigenous women are feeling safe in their communities and their interactions with our various police forces. My question would be, can you share comments or progress with respect to progress that's been made on the co-development of the First Nations Police Services legislation?
Thank you. In fact, I can. So we have embarked upon the co-development in earnest. We have completed 12 rounds of virtual engagement sessions and an additional one which we held directly for Quebec, so the others were national in scope. We examined the issues related to what is required to establish First Nations policing as an essential service, and that looked at roles and responsibilities. It looked at questions as to what the definition of an essential service is, and every session that we had came to discussion of funding and the structures there. There was a lot of candor in those sessions. We are working to analyze all of the input. We continue to work with the AFN as well as with other partners, technical experts such as the First Nations Chiefs of Police Association, who have a lot to provide us with respect to advice on this issue. And we will continue to advise on progress.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I believe I just have a few seconds left, so I'll pass it back to the chair.
Okay. Fantastic, and thank you so much. I'll pass it over for the next 6 minutes to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, 6 minutes.
Merci. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I did say that I would come back to the matter of funding for organizations, because you mentioned what happens at the national level and what happens on the field, and you talked about Quebec as well. There are a lot of organizations that work with organizations and work with women, and they receive their funding through the Quebec Department for Social Services and Health. When we're talking about prevention, often those organizations do work on that. So the money happens through the transfers, and it is essential for helping victims. Answer. And public safety says that there was a virtual consultation throughout Canada, knowing that in Quebec there are First Nations police in a lot of regions. How much were women engaged? How much were they consulted on what things could be changed for public safety? And I will end on an example. They spoke during the national inquiry, and that led to another inquiry and a firing. So if we could hear the voices of those women, perhaps they would have good advice to improve initiatives that impact them. And again, Senator Odette and Ms. Brazeau, you can give your perspective as well. I heard you react to Ms. Vienne's proposal. There is the importance of consultation, and Indigenous groups consult each other. And when we were talking about firing firearms, we created a group. Perhaps we could have a joint team and work on other issues, for example, violence. I don't know if Ms. Brazeau had anything to add. I know, Senator Odette, you already responded to this. And with this question, I will speak to the department. And again, if the other witnesses have anything to say. Resource extraction projects are often located in remote regions. And we talked about this during our previous study on violence against women. There's the difference between services in urban versus rural regions. So perhaps representatives of the department could respond. It could impact all departments because we're talking about access to support and resources for women in remote areas that are victims of violence. There's an aggravating factor as well for these companies. They're often in areas that are remote, and it creates isolation. So there are specific needs in those communities, and how does the government respond to those needs? The fact that those companies are far from urban centers.
I believe that question is directed generally.
Exactement, c'est pour les...
Yes, it's for the departments. So how do your different departments respond to the fact that a lot of these companies are in remote areas?
What I can say from the perspective of public safety, and I would refer to our Aboriginal Community Safety Planning Initiative, is that it is aimed at bringing together the community with provinces, territories, with local governments, and with industry to look at issues affecting community safety. You have asked about the remoteness factor and isolation. Certainly, many of the communities that we're dealing with, First Nations communities, are in isolated areas. So I can say that we are directing our efforts there. Another point I would make is that we are striving to take a trauma-informed approach, and we are striving to ensure that those perspectives, that their sensitivity and I think culturally responsive responses in our programming and our policies.
Est-ce qu'un autre ministère aimerait répondre?
Would any of the other departments like to respond?
Vous me dites combien de temps? Une minute, madame?
How much time do I have left? 1 minute? Okay. So, and any department could respond and could elaborate if I have another turn. Companies in remote areas, and we saw that with analyses and GBA plus analysis. Unfortunately, the legislation is not well implemented. We don't have the data to propose solutions. So if we could ask the departments to continue collecting data, it is important.
Merci. I will now turn it over the next 6 minutes over to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have the floor.
I'd like to allow Senator Audette to continue responding about call to action 1.7 and the ombudsman.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la...
Thank you very much. So I don't call these Indigenous issues, but rather issues that impact Indigenous people. It's the same for people in Quebec and in the Northwest Territories. Having spaces that are independent and safe. And there's a multitude of expertise, both scientific and academic, to ensure that these calls for justice allow us to maintain truth. If there is an injustice, it will be reported and it will be dealt with respectfully, and it will influence legislation and the ways of doing things in Canada. Because currently the process doesn't work, and we've seen that over the past decades. If this ombudsperson or a committee has the ability to make a report to Parliament, well, that will be helpful for you as well. So that if you are in power or in opposition, to honor changes that have been requested. But Ms. Gazan, as long as those changes haven't been implemented, it will be an issue that I will continue to have.
Learning French. I'm trying my best. My next question is for Madame Barrazo. your center, and I know you spoke a little bit about your center and what it does, but we've heard from witness sharing the barriers and trauma Indigenous women and 2S LGBTQIA plus people face in reporting the violence they experience from man camps. However, even when survivors come forward and report the violence, they are faced with additional harm and violence from police. And I know I keep going back to policing because the sad part of this is that even systems that are supposed to protect us abuse us. So where are we to go? We also know from the national inquiry that many Indigenous women in Val-d'Or have suffered extreme abuse by the Sécurité du Québec, certainly under former Premier Couillard, put forward, in fact, because of extreme violence, a compliment on the violence that was being experienced by women who lived in surrounding communities, a compliment to the inquiry at the time. So I wanted to ask you, and certainly not just Quebec, we saw that in Saskatchewan, the report that came out of Saskatchewan, we saw that, like, it's across the country. So I wanted to see if you have any recommendations to ensure that we not only address the violence within the resource extraction sites and adjacent communities, but that survivors coming forward are not further harmed by police. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, I think we have quite a few recommendations that were already given also with the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women. In Quebec, we also had a commission called the Commission Vient that investigated the relationship following the events that happened in Val-d'Or, the relationship between Indigenous people and its public services, where there was many recommendations that were given. I think it's a huge issue that we need to be able to tackle because there is a lack of confidence towards police and policing services by Indigenous women. I see it with members that come to our center who do not want to approach the police to make a complaint. Oftentimes they don't feel that, one, they're taken seriously, two, they have a fear of being criminalized themselves when approaching the police services. They can also have had a violent experience, as you said, already previously with the police services. So there's many different barriers towards Indigenous women being able to approach the police. One thing that we can do is to ensure that we have accompaniment for women who are going to make a complaint with the police. I know that there's a lot of different rules too with the level of accompaniment that a woman can have when they're filing a complaint that I think needs to be looked at. Because if you're a woman who's making a complaint about sexualized violence, there's often systems put in place where they can no longer be accompanied by an intervention worker for fear of nuancing the testimony, but at the same time, the woman can't testify if she doesn't feel safe and secure.
Next, how much time do I have, Chair?
You have 34 seconds.
Okay, so very quickly to Mr. Brady or Madame Brady or Mr. Parker, I'm wondering what, if any, changes have made within the IAA processes to implement Call to Justice 13.3.
Sure. So the Impact Assessment Act does include provisions for GBA plus and security and safety of Indigenous women and girls to be considered in all impact assessments. We also have a research program in place which responds to Call to Justice 13.4. And so far we've dispensed about $900,000 over 11 different projects on research into the issue. See, I'm being told to wrap up.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're going to be doing our final round, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 2.5, 2.5, starting with Shelby Cramp for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My first question today, or the second round, will be posed to Madame Brady with the Impact Assessment Agency. Ms. Brady, the Assembly of First Nations explained that the data that was publicly available on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls was over simplified and underrepresented the scale of the issue, yet it still demonstrates a complex and pervasive pattern of violence against Indigenous women and girls. And as part of the committee's ongoing study, some witnesses mentioned the lack of data with regards to the relationship between violence against Indigenous women and girls and the resource development projects. So my question is, how does the IAA ensure that it is accurately assessing the impact of environmental projects despite the lack of available data?
Thanks for the question. So the information on specific project assessments comes directly from the communities implicated. So we're not relying on, national statistics or necessarily quantitative data. We are actually required to consider Indigenous knowledge and community knowledge. It doesn't need to be statistical or quantitative. So we do rely on lived experience of the community and their concerns and engage throughout the process.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Next question with you again. Are you aware of the resource extraction projects or companies themselves that have implemented initiatives to reduce the negative impacts of the projects on Indigenous women and girls? And if so, could you possibly share some examples of any initiatives by those particular companies? And do you know if those initiatives have been successful or not?
Sure. So my colleagues from NRCan can speak to TMX and those conditions and have mentioned them. So as I mentioned before, under the Impact Assessment Act, our GBA Plus is new, but we do have some experience under the former Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, where the Mikisew Cree were partnered in doing the impact assessment, and under their regime, GBA Plus was required. So in that context, there's a project called the Rose Lithium Mine. The proponent did consider GBA Plus, did consider Indigenous women's safety, and put mitigation measures in place themselves. So in that case, there are mitigation measures in place. They committed and undertook to provide a healthy work environment where sexual harassment would not be tolerated. They included conditions of employment prohibiting harassment, mandatory harassment and awareness training, and then rigorous follow-up of harassment cases and a monitoring program.
Perfect, thank you. And was there someone else going to be answering the other part of that, or no?
I can speak to, sorry, I was getting feedback there. I can speak to the Trans Mountain Expansion Project as well as the Towards Sustainable Mining initiative. Trans Mountain Expansion Project and Trans Mountain Corporation, through its worker accommodation strategy and its socioeconomic monitoring plans, have put in place rigorous initiatives that take into account the impact of the project on the security of the communities where it is operating. I know that the corporation does take security very seriously, working in partnership with local communities, local law enforcement, and its own security. In the mining industry, the Towards Sustainable Mining initiative does place expectations on mining companies, member mining companies, to adhere to a set of principles that are directed towards the safety and security of the communities and women and girls that live in those communities.
Perfect, thank you. Assuming I have a little bit of time left, I'll pose my last question to Honourable Odette. With regards to the final report of the National Inquiry into Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, I can certainly appreciate and I respect you commenting that there's so much generational trauma and that's the root of the issue. But can you clarify, in what ways might distinct groups of Indigenous women and girls have different needs from one another? So, for example, could you speak about the unique experiences of First Nation, Inuit, and or Métis women and girls who are encountering the violence? And is there different needs from one group to the other?
Yes, there is. So I'm from a place where the mining industry, it looks like the biggest golf course in Schefferville. So there's so many holes there. So if we have healing approach or a healing process there in place, it's not something that I can bring back and bring it to Joliette Native Friendship Center, because the realities is different. But also the protocols, the culture, the language, my spirituality is not the same of my sister and Haida Nation and so on. So this is why it's very important that we do respect the people of the land and how they see their healing process.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just got some feedback. I think I went robotic there back into the 80s. I'm just going to pass it now over to Sonia. Sonia, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My last minute, I just want to give Ms. Vanderbilt. I just want to start. First of all, thank you, all the witnesses. Thank you, Honorable Senator Audit. Thank you for your work, all you do, and thank you for being with us. So my first question is to Ms. Larocque or Ms. Bogart. You can also expand on that. We all know the appropriate health and social services much needed in the Indigenous communities. So for the increasing awareness, you said the engagement with the NGOs is very much needed too. So what kind of the awareness campaign is going on? Can you expand on that?
Apologies, was that directed to myself?
Sonia, who would you like to answer the question?
Ms. Bogart can give the answer.
So I think what I believe you're asking, and please correct me if I'm wrong so that I can respond accordingly, is you're talking about the awareness to health workers to be able to identify potential victims of human trafficking and what we're doing in that respect. Would that be correct?
The combat human trafficking, you can also expand on that too.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I would say under the national strategy, we do have a national awareness campaign. What we heard from our stakeholders was that people need to understand what human trafficking is in order to be able to deal with it. And so we do have a national strategy of awareness that's aimed at young people and parents to better understand. But we've gone one step further, and that's about the tools that we're currently creating this year to be able to provide to industry providers. And as I mentioned, one of those areas is the health sector. And the tools will be given to people so that they can understand. For instance, nurses will be better able to understand some of the signs of human trafficking if they believe that that someone is being, is a victim, what they can do, who they can inform, how they can intervene. So I think that it's multifaceted, our approach, which is national awareness, which we are going to be continuing through various means, but also that specific awareness. We know that NGOs also deal with lots of individuals who are victims and survivors of human trafficking. And one of the things that we heard through our stakeholder engagement as well is that one size does not fit all. We need to be able to embrace and support the communities who are dealing with these individuals. And so that's where we have funded 20 community-based programming. Those programs are under 2 pillars of empowerment, which is to support victims and survivors to help them regain control and independence through a victim-centered approach, and then through the prevention, which is to be able to target youth who may in fact be at risk to being trafficked. And so again, those are 20 community-based programs. I may just finish with the fact that out of those 15 serve Indigenous communities, and 2 of those are Indigenous-led. So I hope that responds to your question.
Thank you. My next questions to Honorable Senator Audit. National inquiry cited contribution factors to violence against Indigenous women and girls include economic insecurity. Senator Audit, how could this government play a role to help increase Indigenous women's economic security and empowerment?
I will repeat again. Thank you for your question. The best person to give you the right answer would be the grassroots women, the women who lives in the community, the women who lives in downtown Eastside Vancouver or Montreal and so on. And making sure that it's not a pan approach, but a diverse, where we can respect what they really want to see and where they want to be involved. I see
Wonderful.
a president saying, okay, Michelle.
I like to dance. It's Friday afternoon. Thanks so much. I'm now going to pass it over for 2.5 minutes to Adrienne LaRoche. Adrienne, you have 2.5 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Senator Odette. So happy to see you, Ms. Zink, Ms. Bogard, Ms. Moran. Thank you, everyone. I was supposed to see a Friendship Center in 2020, and then COVID happened, so hopefully I'll be able to visit at some point. And throughout this study, we want to be able to be constructive. We need to talk about funds that are stuck in Ottawa right now. There are calls for action, but have not yet all been implemented. We have a GBA plus legislation that could help us with Indigenous women and girls in the natural resource sector. We have solutions. I am part of a group that works on modern slavery. If anyone wants to respond, what is missing for our report? What recommendations would you share with all that we already know? I will ask you to answer in a few seconds, Senator Odette. Thank you very much. In the recommendations, there needs to be a focus on human rights, on Indigenous women's rights, safety, and the relationship with the environment. For economic development, we need to examine the number of projects in our communities. We end up in cafeterias, but we could be engineers. We could be responsible of the environmental assessment. So we need to invest in the training of Indigenous women and girls to ensure that they have their word to say in what's happening on our territories. So I have less than a minute, but I wanted to offer anyone the opportunity to respond, Ms. Brazeau or any of the representatives from the different departments. I would like to add to what Senator Odette has said. Indigenous people need to be engaged in the creation of these projects. They need to be consulted. Their needs need to be heard. And as was said, we have seen how we can be mobilized around a virus, like COVID, for example. But for violence against women, there are still barriers that seem impossible to overcome. And I also wonder if these barriers are difficult to overcome because of a lack of goodwill. But thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm now going to pass it over for the final line of questioning to Leah Gazan. Leah, you have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much. My last question is for Senator Odette. I think you can sense my frustration. It's hard to continue watch Indigenous women particularly experience violence, even from the very systems that are supposed to protect us. It's hard to build relationships at the end of a gun, as we continue to witness in the news. I wanted to share a quote that you gave to Al Jazeera. You said, "We cannot keep doing it this way. It has been done. If Canadians, politicians, and industries want to include us, speak to us, create a safe space where we can have our say, then we can bring back that balance." So my question to you is, could you please suggest some ways to ensure that a safe and transparent place can be created to hold conversations and build relationships when between Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals, the government, and industries?
Alors, merci beaucoup. J'espérais trop.
Thank you very much. I was hoping to find a way to share a concern. Most Indigenous women are visionaries. So I know that in Innu territories, in Anishinaabe territories, and in other territories throughout Canada, the green shift contains batteries, and lithium is on our territories. We need to engage women and talk about the economic and environmental impact. I'm concerned and afraid because I believe that an important voice will not be heard, will be muzzled, and I hope that you will take that into account.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to actually build on that. I know that we often talk about consultation, and we've heard from other testimonies, it's usually with the exclusion of Indigenous women. I would say particularly around resource extraction. It's usually men around the table, and women are on the front lines of violence. What do you think needs to be done immediately to address that, to make sure that our voices are at the table?
In few seconds, there's of us. With internet, you can find us. There's women across Canada, everywhere I went, that could participate or put something or stop something, but we have knowledgeable women across Canada, and we're side by side now. I'm at the Senate for the next 25 years, so I hope I'll get some emails from you.
Thank you so much.
I think our time is over, but what an excellent way of ending it. And thank you so much for that, Senator Odette. I would like to thank all of our witnesses, of course, Senator Odette, Jennifer, Kimberly, Christine, Melanie, Michelle, Patricia, and Brent. Thank you so much for joining us today and providing us your testimony. Just a few notes today. Today, of course, is our very last meeting of this session, and we'll be joining one another coming in the new year, in the new session. But thank you guys for such a great spring term. Of course, what do I have? I have excellent work as number one. And I would like to say interpretation, translation, of course, Claire and Monique, and all the hospitality. And of course, to our clerk who always keeps us on track and all in the ball. Thanks to everybody for such a successful session. I wish everybody an excellent summer. If anybody wants to put their mics on and say just goodbye, that's fine. But I will adjourn the meeting if I can get the approval from all. Everybody's good.
Merci beaucoup. On se retrouve à l'automne.
Thank you. We'll see you in the fall.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for the invitation.